Bag alert, bag alert, bag alert. No, 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 no. Double bag alert, double. No, 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 no. Triple bag alert. No, 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 no. This one is a little bit different from all the other ones. Okay, this is the first week of free agency, so we have to really bring things out the right way. Okay, and what better way to do it than to introduce a new bag alert? Big bank alert. That's right. Big bank alert, big bank alert, big bank alert, folks. That's right. Week 1 of free agency is in the books, folks. And man, oh man, do we have a lot to discuss. Okay, let's just get into everything. So, Davante Adams goes back to Cali. Myles Garrett stays in Cleveland. Josh Allen hits the lottery when it comes to quarterback contracts. Geno Smith heads to Sin City. DK heads to Pittsburgh. Sam Darnold goes to Seattle. Crazy, right? Cooper Kupp comes back home. The Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson debacle continues. The free agency recap and the divisional rodeo continues, folks, and we're in the South. That's right. Collard greens, biscuits, all that good stuff and more, okay? I am so excited. You guys don't understand. I have been waiting to do this episode because there is so much that we have to do. This might go down as the longest episode by far because we have so much we have to unpack and whatnot. But you already know I have to get into my spell, okay? All of this and more on the 73rd episode of the Football Junkies podcast, okay? I am your host with the most, okay? I am your chief bag dominus, okay? Anything and everything related to the bag and more, okay? I am your chief head of the table, everything related to the draft, everything related to mock drafts, trades, rumors, you name it, I cover it, all of that and more, okay? But guess what? I am all these things and more, okay? But guess what? I am your GM who currently is not on the team right now, but don't you worry about it, okay? Don't you worry about it, okay? Because guess what? The most important title that you must remember, my fellow junkies, is I am your host, Kale. You already know how these things are about to go. This might be a 3-hour episode. Let's see if we can get to that point. Maybe we might have some breaking news about Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins signing a deal. Maybe we might have some news about Russell Wilson joining the Giants. I was about to say Jets, but the Giants, okay? So you already know how my spill is about to get into. So guess what? On 3, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's just get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the league right now. So we got so much we got to talk about. You don't even realize how much we got to talk about, okay? Some hot takes, some truth bombs, all of that and more, okay? So let's just get into it. Davante Adams heads back to the West Coast, okay? I did not expect for him to stay in the East Coast as much as, he was saying, I love Mike Tomlin. I would love to play for Mike Tomlin. That was not going to happen, okay? He was going to go back to the West Coast. And so he went to a contender in the Rams. So he signed a 2-year, $44 million deal with a $12 million signing bonus, $26 million guaranteed, okay? Now, when we look at his stats, 85 receptions for 1,063 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, and 12.5 receiving yards per reception. Now, when we look at this is a great replacement for Cooper Kupp, okay? You're having to get somebody who is a little bit more productive at this point than what Cooper Kupp has been in the last few years. But Davante Adams has been able to do that with grace, regarded as a top 5, top 10 receiver by a lot of defenders, okay? You pair him with Puka Nacua. That's a deadly combination here, folks. That's a deadly combination. Now, granted, do I still believe that the Rams will probably get another receiver? No. Because they brought back, Tutu Atwell. They have Puka, and now you got Davante Adams. You also have Tyler Higbee. You have the running back as well. All is really good. All they really have to do now is really just focus on the defense, primarily the secondary. And I think this team could go right back into the NFC Championship. Now, am I saying they can go, to another Super Bowl? Only time will tell. But at this point, they're going to make some noise. They're going to do their thing. Now let's talk about this Myles Garrett guy. This guy in Cleveland, right? So everybody was under the impression that Myles Garrett was going to get traded this offseason, and for the longest time he was saying he didn't want to be a part of Cleveland, and he put out this statement and all that other stuff. Come to find out, the dude just wanted more money. That's all money. So he inks a 4-year, $160 million, $0.5 million guaranteed. He had 47 tackles, 14 sacks, and 84 quarterback pressures. My take is this. If you wanted more money, just say that. If you were really 10 toes down on your stance of not wanting to play a single down for the Cleveland Browns, you should have stood on it. You never should have backed down when they was offering you more money, but you did. And so now you're going to be stuck in a crappy situation. You're going to be stuck on a team that is not going to be winning anytime soon. Granted, the money was still clear. The check was still clear. You'll still be able to, live the lifestyle that you want, but at what cost? You'll never be able to experience a championship. And no one in their right mind would be willing to make a trade for you at this point because you have this crazy dumb contract. You done reset the market again. The pass rusher market just got reset twice. You were all happy and smiles and I'm ready to be back and oh man, I love these guys. Yeah. Man, nobody cares about that. You was just ratting out these fools. Come on, man. And here I am thinking that Myles Garrett was going to go to the Eagles. Well, guess I was wrong. Guess we all were wrong at this point. But at this point, this is basically just a move to continue to put butts in seats for Cleveland. I don't see them, making it any farther than what they did in the last 2 years. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Deshaun Watson was a fail, but the degree of the failure has to be measured at this point because right now it is starting to be a giant snowball of a disaster. And the reason why I say that is because the more years that they push this contract back, the bigger the cap hit that they're going to have to take at once. If I'm not mistaken, and somebody can fact check me, I have no problem being wrong and whatnot. If they don't do something with his contract next year, you are looking at a potential $90+ million cap hit. I'm sorry, folks. There is not one person that is worth all that money. Not even Tom Brady. And it's no disrespect to him at all. You guys put 3 mortgages on one player, thinking that you were going to get half or maybe just a little bit of what the Texans got out of him. No, you didn't. You didn't get anything close to it. And so you were thinking that maybe this upcoming season he was going to play. Well, guess what? That's not going to be the case because why? He injured his other Achilles. So you won't be able to see where he is until next year. So while those checks are continuing to go to Deshaun Watson's account, you are having to figure out what you're going to do moving forward. Now, granted, Joel Bitonio said that he's coming back, and I think Wyatt Teller, has also said that he's coming back as well. But those are just 2 people. You still have to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of the team. So I say all that to say this. Yes, they are going to draft a quarterback. Yes, it'll probably be between, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. But the fact of the matter is, this team, it needs so much that you would essentially need every single draft pick to hit. And I'm not talking about, they're doing okay, they're doing well. Like, no, these guys have to be playing at a Pro Bowl, borderline all pro level from the gate, from the jump. That's how bad of a situation they are. So if you want to continue to be in pig slop for the rest of your career, by all means, do it. But if it was me, I would have not even touched the very ground that is the Cleveland Browns facility until I was traded. But I'm not Myles Garrett. But we have to talk about a curveball of a quarterback contract, and that was Josh Allen getting his deal. So Josh Allen inked a 6-year, $330 million contract. $250 million guaranteed. He'll be making $55 million a year. A year. It's crazy, right? We already know the stats, but I'll just go over them. 3,731 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 picks, 7.7 yards per attempt, and a 63.6 completion percentage. We all know that he won the MVP, even though Lamar should have won it. That's a different story for a different day. But the fact of the matter is they realized that they were going to have to pay him more money. Okay? Josh Allen right now is playing at a level that the Bills have never seen before. Okay? When everything is said and done, and this is no disrespect to Jim Kelly at all, when everything is said and done, I would not be surprised if Josh Allen is first in every single major quarterback category within the Bills. Okay? Granted, this does create some cap space, and this does allow them to create, some leverage and whatnot, which is great. But at the same time, the time is still ticking for y'all to win a championship. Because right now, yes, you still do have Josh Allen for a while. Yes, you locked Rousseau and you locked up a few other players. Great. But the fact of the matter is, you guys still have yet to get over the hump. You guys have yet to been able to beat Patrick Mahomes. So at some point, you got to win. You have to win. All right, you want an MVP. Cool, great. Congratulations. Slow claps, fast claps, whatever. Don't care. But what matters at this point is a championship. That is the cherry on top. If you win a championship, you have automatically eliminated yourself and put yourself in a category that only Bills fans would only dream and want. So at this point, yes, celebrate the contract, but at the same time, still look at the watch because time is still ticking. And so the longer that this goes, the more questions are going to be, asked for Josh Allen because you have to win a championship at this point. It's the same thing with Lamar. It's the same thing with Joe Burrow. It's the same thing with any of those other quarterbacks that have not won a championship outside of Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. Everybody is on the clock because you guys have to win a championship because you guys are playing at levels that we have never seen before, right? Granted, we all know in the early 2000s we had, Tom Brady, Big Ben, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, if I've already said it already, and a few other quarterbacks. But we have never had a group of quarterbacks that have been able to light it up almost every single game. It's almost like a movie every single Sunday when you watch these quarterbacks. From Joe Burrow to Patrick Mahomes to Lamar Jackson to even Josh Allen. It's a movie. And you want the movie to end on a good foot with them, walking to the sunset, being a champion. But will that happen? I don't know. I knew I was forgetting somebody. I knew there was somebody else that got paid lately, and that was Gregory Rousseau. Gregory Rousseau got paid. He got a back alert as well. So he inked a 4-year, $80 million deal, okay? His average salary is $20 million. His signing bonus is $17.5 million, and he's guaranteed $38.7 million. Man, I knew I was forgetting somebody, but when we look at this, Gregory Rousseau, like I said when we covered the Bills, he was going to get paid. It was either going to be early or it was going to be late. And so the Bills actually did the right thing, and they paid him early because we all know, just like what the Bengals are going through right now, when y'all take that risk, sometimes it benefits you and sometimes it burns you. And the Bills realize, hey, listen, we cannot take that risk. And so when we look at this, when we look at his stats specifically, 53 tackles, 8 sacks, 59 quarterback pressures, this has been a very productive player, okay? This is somebody who is continuing to climb, who is continuing to get better and better each and every year. And so it was only right for the Bills to just give him the deal now. This has been a really productive and consistent pass rusher. Now, Am I saying he could, get more than 8 sacks? Oh, I believe it. I believe Gregory Rousseau has the potential to get double-digit sack seasons. It's only up from here, folks, okay? The Bills are prioritizing taking care of their players, which I love oh so much. So now, again, like I said before with Josh Allen, time's a ticking. Tick tock. Tick tock, Josh Allen. Tick tock, I forgot what's their GM? Brandon Bean, I think it is. Brandon Bean. Yeah, Brandon Bean. Time is ticking, man. Time is ticking. I want y'all to win. I want Lamar to win and Josh Allen and everybody else to win. But we all know there's only one winner out of this entire thing. It's not both teams are winners, only one. But let's get into this Geno Smith thing. So Geno Smith goes to Cincinnati, folks, all right? So we got to talk about this because it was a trade, okay? So Seattle receives a third-round pick, and, of course, Las Vegas receives Geno Smith as well, okay? But then he inks a deal with the Raiders, okay? A 3-year, $75 million deal, $40 million guaranteed, $25 million a year. Not bad. Really good, actually. So when we look at his stats, 4,320 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, 15 picks, and 7.5 yards per attempt, and a 70.4 completion percentage. Now, as we talked about the whole debacle with the Seahawks maybe about a week or two, I had already believed that this was going to be the last time that we saw Geno Smith in a Seahawks jersey simply because they were pressed for cash. You had 3 players that were taking up a large chunk of the cap space. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Geno Smith. And so what happened? They released Tyler Lockett, they trade away DK Metcalf, and then they trade away Geno Smith. And it was only right for them to send him to Las Vegas because why? He was able to get his second chance under Pete Carroll. So it was only right for Pete Carroll to continue to get his guy again. Let's be real here. This is not a hard topic, to wrap your mind around. This isn't a topic where you're like, well, why do they do this or why do they do that? No. Let's be real here, folks. Geno Smith is still a really productive quarterback. Am I saying he's a top 10 quarterback? No. Am I saying he's possibly maybe a top 15, maybe top 20 quarterback? Yes. Yes. He is still a very productive quarterback. Now, is he somebody that can go toe-to-toe with a Burrow, a Lamar, or Mahomes, or anything like that? I don't know. I don't know. Give me a few weeks about that, okay? Let's get through the draft first, then we can figure out exactly how things are going to go. But at the same time, this makes that division more and more competitive. Because remember, for all those years, it was just Mahomes just steamrolling the entire division. But now you got Bo Nix, you got Justin Herbert, you got Geno Smith, and you got Mahomes. All in one division. Man, oh man, will that be a very competitive division this season, okay? Each and every one of those teams have positioned themselves to get better than last year. And it's only up from here. The Broncos are getting their act together. The Raiders have the potential to get their act together. The Chargers are starting to be a little bit more consistent. I'm telling you, folks, those other 3 teams are going to make the process for the Chiefs to win the the first seed. It's going to be difficult for them to win the first seed this year. I'm telling you. One of those teams is going to prevent Mahomes from getting that first seed. And man, oh man, is it going to be hilarious. But let's get into another situation. That is Sam Darnold going to Seattle. I know, right? It's like a swap. You go to Sin City, I go to, Seattle or whatever. Who cares, okay? So Sam Darnold inks a 3-year, $100.5 million contract, $55 million guaranteed. He'll be making $33.5 million a year. When we look at his stats, we all know his stats. 4,319 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 12 picks, 7.9 yards per attempt, and a 66.2 completion percentage. First of all, we have to thank Kevin O'Connell for this, okay? First of all, half of that money needs to go to Kevin O'Connell's account because if it wasn't for Kevin O'Connell, he would not be getting this bag. I'm just being completely honest with you, okay? But when we look at this, from the outside looking in, Seattle was going to get Sam Darnold. Nobody else was going to be willing to give Sam Darnold a $100+ million contract. Nobody wasn't. But who would do that? The Seahawks. Once they got off of the Geno Smith contract and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, they made the decision. Okay, let's go and get our quarterback. And that's exactly what they did. Now, This is a little bit of a different contract because it's a 3-year instead of a 4-year. So my guess is this, and I haven't been able to look at the structure of the contract, which, believe it or not, a lot of the contracts you really haven't been able to really look at the structure of them. But my guess is they structured this contract to where they put a lot of his money up front in the first 2 years, so that maybe that third year it can be sort of like a ghost year, or there'll probably be like, less guarantees and less of a base salary. It could be one of those two different things. But all in all, okay, yes, you guys got your quarterback. Cool. You still have JSN. You now have Cooper Kupp. Like, okay, this team could do a few things. Now, am I saying this team is going to be ultra competitive? No. Do I think this team still needs a lot of work to do? Yes. But, I mean, they addressed the most important position, which is quarterback. So, all in all, congratulations to them. Now, we got to talk about DK Metcalf going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, you thought I was going to do the six time. No, we're not doing that, okay? Because I got a little bit of a beef right now with the con artist, okay? But I'll leave it there. We're not going to talk about it, but we will talk about it. We will address it, okay, when we get to the AFC North, okay? So DK Metcalf was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Seattle receives the 2025 second round pick and a 2025 seventh round pick. Pittsburgh, of course, receives DK Metcalf and a 2025 sixth round pick, okay? And in doing so, DK Metcalf agrees to a 5-year, $132 million deal. He'll be making $33 million a year, okay? Now, when we look at his stats, 66 receptions for 992 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, 15 receiving yards per reception. Now, when we look at this is the quote-unquote splashy move. I don't know why, but I just hate using that word. But this is the big move that everybody has been wanting the Steelers to do. Because remember, we all know what happened last year when they were basically the only team trying to get Brandon Ayuk, and they didn't get anything. And so that year was just horrible, okay? And so they wanted to make things right, and they got DK Metcalf. Great. I already knew that the Seattle Seahawks were not going to get a first-round pick for DK Metcalf. I'm sorry, he's not worth a first-round pick. Because why? You're going to have to pay him $30+ million a year. Why am I giving you a first-round pick, an additional pick, just for you to do that? No. All in all, great deal for the Steelers. They get their number one receiver. I just want to see how things are going to go moving forward. Because you have DK Metcalf, you have George Pickens, you have Pat Freiermuth, you have Jalen Warren. Like, you have a pretty competent offense, all right? But the question is, how are things going to go moving forward? Because they don't have a quarterback. And I know I'm not really supposed to be talking about the Steelers, but you just have to at this point. But DK Metcalf is somebody who was going to put in 100%. Not, you know what? Screw 100. He's going to put 110% effort in everything that he does. Every route, every block, being a menace to society, to every DB. He is going to do that, okay? This is the brothers of destruction of wide receivers. You're talking about two legitimate crash outs of a receiver who do not care, who always look for the fade. Every single time, you are going to see DK Metcalf and George Pickens gang up on some of these DBs. DK Metcalf got him in a headlock, and George Pickens is just beating them up, okay? That's how crazy of a situation this is. But at the same time, you're getting somebody who is literally in the middle of their prime. So you're going to get probably the remainder of his prime and more. DK Metcalf's game is going to age well. Because even when he loses his speed, he'll still have his strength. So he'll still be able to win those contested catches and everything. So all in all, great move. But we have to talk about free agency, folks. The first week of free agency, and best believe within maybe the next 2 or 3 episodes, we'll do grades for every single team with, the free agency moves, because there are some teams that did more than others. And I'll just leave it there before I get really upset. So let's just get into it. So let's start. Harold Landry, okay, inked a 3-year, $43.5 million deal with the Patriots, $26 million guaranteed, and he will be making $14.5 million a year. His stats, of course, 71 tackles, 9 sacks, 41 quarterback pressures. Now, when we look at this, when we talked about that whole scenario when it happened, when he was, given permission to seek a trade, in the back of my mind, I had a feeling that he probably would go to the Patriots, but I didn't believe that he was actually going to do it. And the only reason why I say that is because I thought he was going to try to at least go after a championship, at least. That's what I would have thought, but clearly I was wrong. And so he goes back to Mike Vrabel, which this actually benefits Mike Vrabel a lot because he brings in a defensive player who can sort of show everybody else like, hey, this is how Mike Vrabel does this and does that, and this is how you're supposed to move in this situation, that situation, all those different things. Compared to, him having to emphasize, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that. Like, he doesn't have to do that no more because you bring in someone like a Harold Landry. On top of that, you just made this defense a whole lot better, okay? You got Chris Gonzalez, unfortunately. You have Carlton Davis. You have Harold Landry. You have Christian Barmore. You got Milton Williams. This is a really good defense. Now, am I saying this team could possibly win 7 or 8 games? I don't know. But only time will tell, okay? Let's keep on going. J.C. Horn, okay, corner for the Panthers. Inked a 4-year, $100 million deal, okay? 28.4 signing bonus, all right? 72 million guaranteed. He'll be making $25 million a year, folks. So when we look at his stats, 68 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 pick. He was targeted 75 times and allowed 38 receptions for 419 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. J.C. Horn, when he was coming out of, I think, what was it, South Carolina? I think it was South Carolina. If it wasn't, then I'm wrong. Sorry. When he was coming out of college, I was very high on J.C. Horn. I wanted the Steelers to go after J.C. Horn, but clearly they did not get him. Me personally, I would have thought the Panthers would have traded him, but I think they valued him so much that they just had to, go ahead and just pay him, which, all in all, it's a really good deal. He's still a really productive corner. He's definitely on that top tier of young corners. So I don't see why, anybody would have tried to, possibly trade for him, Steelers, or maybe, Ravens, or, any other team. Just saying. But, all jokes aside, J.C. Horn plays a very pivotal role in this defense. He has done a phenomenal job within the last 3 years. And so it's only right to reward him. That's it. Now, on to Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack inks a 1-year, $18 million deal with the Chargers. Okay, he stays back in L.A. $10 million signing bonus, $18 million guaranteed, $18 million a year. Now, when we look at his stats, 39 tackles, 6 sacks, and 54 quarterback pressures. Now, when we look at this, I believed that Khalil Mack was not going to go anywhere else. Simply because, and this is just a truth bomb, I'm just being honest with you guys. Khalil Mack has been more productive in the last 4 years with the Chargers than what Joey Bosa has. Joey Bosa has not been able to stay healthy to save a lick. Okay? You're looking at a Khalil Mack who I think he's only 2 years removed from being a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. He has been able to be very productive in these last few years. So it was only right to bring him back. Now, granted, of course, they had to release him because they probably wanted to do so just to free up some cap space so they can address other positions. But all in all, you bring somebody back. I definitely believed that the Chargers were not going to bring back Joey Bosa at any time simply because why? He hasn't been super productive. He's more expensive. And there's just no need to keep him. I'm sorry. If he was doing what he did in the first 3 years, okay, fine. No problem whatsoever. But anytime you have Khalil Mack, old Khalil Mack, doing a better job, more productive, more consistent than what you have been, that's a problem. And that's why the Chargers chose Khalil Mack over Joey Bosa. Right? Now, Chris Godwin. He inks a 3-year, $66 million deal, $44 million guaranteed, $22 million a year, okay? And when we look at his stats, 50 receptions for 576 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, 11.5 receiving yards per reception. Now, when we look at this, Chris Godwin could have tested free agency if he really wanted to. He could have went, anywhere. If he could have went to the Patriots, for instance, right? The Patriots would have been willing to give him 30 plus million. Chris Godwin had a market. I don't care what anyone says. He had a legitimate market because why? He is still a very productive receiver. Despite the injury that he had last season, he was still very productive. And so Chris Godwin decided to choose loyalty with a stable franchise over testing free agency, which I don't blame him for. And we'll get more into once we get into the divisional rodeo. But the fact of the matter is the Buccaneers have been very consistent. I don't know, 5, 10, maybe even longer than that. But in recent times, they have been very productive since the whole Tom Brady situation, okay? And so I think Chris Godwin values that a lot. And so in doing so, I think he was just like, forget about it. I'll just stay here. Why leave? I'm in the best situation. I'm not too far away from Disney World, not too far from Universal Studios. Like, come on. Where else would I want to go? I don't want to go nowhere where it's cold. I want to be somewhere it's warm. Come on. But when we look at it, we got some other people that we have to talk about, okay? Drew Dalman. Yes, you're probably thinking, who is Drew Dalman? Drew Dalman was the center for the Falcons, and now he is the center for the Bears. Go Bears. 3 years, $42 million, a $6 million signing bonus, $28 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $14 million a year. I think we got to have an honest conversation, It's just crazy to me how a lot of these offensive coaches, when their offensive lines aren't that good, guess what? They address it so quickly and they rebuild their offensive line so quickly that it's just like, whoa, what just happened? Ben Johnson made a few trades. Okay, they got Joe Thuney, they got the guard from the Rams, and now they just got a center. Their offensive line is good now. Their offensive line is good. They no longer have to prioritize offensive line in the draft if they really don't want to. That is how quickly they address their problems compared to defensive coaches where they'll just neglect an offensive line and just say, hey, put a Band-Aid over it. We'll be perfectly fine. But when we look at this, I would have thought the Falcons would have tried to at least put out an offer for Drew Dalman simply because that offensive line for the Falcons has been really good lately. And so you would have thought, hey, keep the center. The center is really important outside of quarterback. Clearly, that's not the case. But you know what? We'll save that for the Falcons. I'm going to save that for the Falcons. I have so much I have to say, okay? You guys don't realize how excited I am to do about this. Not to mention, if I'm not mistaken, I think our first year anniversary for this podcast, I think, is next week, if I'm not mistaken. But who cares about that? All right, back to the free agency stuff. But when we look at this, offensive linemen have become more and more a priority in recent free agencies than what we've seen in past years. Why? Because we're seeing a lot of interior defensive linemen who are wrecking shop. So what's the best way to prevent that from happening? You get some really productive interior offensive linemen. And that's exactly what the Bears did. The Bears prioritized the health and wealth of Caleb Williams. Your quarterback's years are determined by their offensive line. If they have an offensive line, oh, hey, they'll be fine. They'll be perfectly fine. If they don't have an offensive line, good is gone in less than 10 years. If you don't believe me, ask Andrew Luck. No disrespect. Now let's go to DJ Reed, okay? DJ Reed inks a 3-year, $48 million deal, $32 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $16 million a year, okay? When we look at his stats, 64 tackles, 1 sack. He was targeted 59 times and allowed 33 receptions for 369 yards and 1 touchdown. DJ Reed goes to the Lions. I was a little bit shocked about this one. Only because I would have thought he would have stayed in the AFC, personally. But clearly that's not the case. I knew that he wasn't going to go to the Jets. Okay, I knew he wasn't going to, not go because he was already with the Jets. I knew that he wasn't going to stay with the Jets, But to go to the Lions, the Lions do value their secondary a lot. And so getting someone like a DJ Reed would definitely do wonders because, again, they lost Carlton Davis, but they still have Terrion Arnold. So you have Terrion Arnold and you have DJ Reed. So, that's a good tandem right there. Milton Williams gets the Brinks truck, okay? At first, we're thinking, oh, he's going to the Panthers. And then Ian Rappaport says, not. Guess where he's going? To the Patriots, folks. So he inks a 4-year, $104 million deal. $24 million signing bonus. So $63 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $26 million a year. Let me tell you something before I get into the stats. All right, now, because I'm feeling a little bit funny. Okay, I need to hire one of these agents to be my representation when we get into the big contracts and whatnot, because you guys are legal robbers. Okay, and I mean this in a funny way. You guys are legal robbers. You guys, I don't know how you do it, but when it comes to free agency, you guys are doing the Birdman hand rub when it comes to a free agent, especially a top free agent who's your client. Because you know why? They get the bag. Better yet, forget about a bag. They get the Brinks truck, okay? The Brinks truck is just pulled into the driveway. Give them the keys and just say, hey, all that's yours in the back, my G. That's how crazy it is. When we look at this, Milton Williams, from a stat perspective, okay, his stats were 24 tackles, 5 sacks, and 35 quarterback pressures. Folks, we're talking about somebody who was playing very well when it came to the Super Bowl. You're talking about somebody who was wrecking shop along with Jalen Carter. So it was only right for them to pay him. And not to mention, you're talking about somebody who didn't play as many snaps as everybody else did. So you have to factor in that, and you also have to factor in that he was one of those defensive linemen that was waiting. This is exactly why the Eagles' recipe has been able to withstand the test of time. Because you know why? They continue to draft offensive and defensive linemen every single year, and you don't even know who you're getting. You could be getting a dog and you don't even realize it. That's how crazy it is. And guess what? He got paid for it. Man, you don't want a Super Bowl. You ain't got $100 million contract. Man, life is good. Life is good in the hood. Man. We also got to talk about another trade, and that is Laremy Tunsil getting traded to the Commanders. It's just crazy how, now that I'm a Steelers fan, the Commanders want to get their act together. And, every single day I'm just wondering if I should be a Commanders fan at this point, because the Commanders are basically on the cusp of potentially winning the Super Bowl at this point. I mean, this is just horrible. Horrible. But when we look at this, okay, Washington receives a 2025 4th-round pick in Laremy Tunsil. Houston receives a 2025 3rd and 7th-round pick, as well as a 2026 4th-round pick. Let me tell you something. Their GM, cooking. He's been cooking with hot grease from the minute that they traded for Debo, okay? They are serious about Jaden Daniels, and it shows. Now, when we look at this, for the Texans, I'm still trying to figure out why would you make this trade. Like, Laremy Tunsil has been your best offensive lineman. Why would you trade him away? Not to mention, you didn't even get a 1st-round pick for him. That's crazy. That is robbery. Highway robbery. And they did it. Oh, man. When this news broke, I almost lost it, folks. That's how crazy it was. But from a financial standpoint, he still has 2 years left on his deal, counting this year. A base salary of $20.9 million, okay, with a cap hit of $21.3 million, which, really isn't that bad. Now, the thing is this benefits Washington more because why? You solidified your left tackle spot with a really good left tackle. Outside of Trent Williams, Laremy Tunsil is probably either in the same conversation with Trent Williams or probably right under him, but he's not too far away from Trent Williams. Not to mention, this reduces the priority of getting a left tackle to maybe the 6th or 7th round if they really wanted to. Because you brought in someone that's been highly productive basically his entire career. So you protect Jaden Daniels' blind side while at the same time you're making a large investment into Jaden Daniels because, again, you build your team when the quarterback is on a rookie deal. Because once that rookie deal is over with, things get a little bit crazy. But for Houston, I'm trying to understand why would you trade away Laremy Tunsil? Unless if you're going to address offensive line high, because right now you have to address your left tackle, you got to address guard. I think you also have to address maybe center if I'm not mistaken, but like they've let go a few of their offensive linemen. And they really haven't made a whole lot of additions to their offensive line. So I'm just trying to understand why I do that now. Especially when CJ Stroud had the season that he just had, where basically he was taking a beating because of this offensive line. So I don't know what their plan is, but they must feel real confident in their plan. Okay. Now let's get into Will Fries. Okay, Will Fries joins the Vikings. So he inked a 5-year, $88 million deal, $17.6 million a year. The Vikings prioritize their offensive and defensive line, and it's going to pay off substantially. Whoever their quarterback is, whether it be Aaron Rodgers, whether it be J.J. McCarthy, whether it be anybody else, they're going to be fine. Christian Darrisaw's coming back. You pair him with Will Fries and everybody else on this offensive line. On top of that, you have Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hockenson, and Jordan Addison, and Aaron Jones. Man, listen, let me tell you something. This Vikings team is going to be a problem. This Vikings team is going to be a menace to society, folks, because why? They realize that, listen, we must prioritize our offensive and defensive line. That is the only way that we are going to be able to go further in the playoffs. Otherwise, we're going to be right where we just were last year, which is trying to compete for a high seed, but we basically flop. And it shows with the next two contracts, which are related to the Vikings, which is Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. Both great signings, not a lot of money, and that bolsters up your defensive line even more because now you have Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, Dallas Turner, and I forget who the other pass rusher is, along with Byron Murphy and Harrison Smith. Like, it's a really good defense. We'll look at Jonathan Allen's deal. 3 years, $51 million, a $14 million signing bonus, $31.2 million guaranteed, only $17 million a year. That's not bad. And even when you look at his stats last year, which are a little bit low only because, he suffered a pec injury sort of like middle to late part of the season, and originally he was declared out. But then once they made it to the playoffs and whatnot, it opened up a window for him to be able to come back, and, the rest is history. So when we look at his stats, 19 tackles, 3 sacks, 14 quarterback pressures. Now, I knew Jonathan Allen wasn't going to be able to demand 20 plus million. But around that, 17 to 18 million, I think that's the sweet spot for him. And then with Javon Hargrave, same situation. You're coming off of an injury year. When we look at his deal, 2 years, 30 million, 19 million guaranteed, 15 million a year. Perfect. And then we look at his stats, 7 tackles, 1 sack, and 8 quarterback pressures. These are 2 very productive defensive linemen that injuries have basically derailed them this past season. So now this is a bounce back year for the both of them. And I think this is the best situation for them to go to. Now, me personally would have wanted them to go to the Steelers just because, Gravedigger coming back to the Steelers, but clearly that was not the case. But when we look at Joey Bosa's situation, okay, this one was a little bit of a head scratcher only because the Bills got rid of Von Miller. Okay, cool. I understand that 100% of the way. You wanted to get rid of that, horrendous contract that you gave him, which it was a horrendous contract, and they only paid him that type of money because of what he did during the Super Bowl and that entire playoff run with the Rams. Okay, but when we look at Joey Bosa's contract, 1 year, $12.6 million, $12 million guaranteed, $12.6 million a year. Okay, when we look at his stats, 22 tackles, 5 sacks, 33 quarterback pressures. This is somewhat of a let's see if you still got it, if you don't got it. It's a low risk, high reward deal. Because outside of Gregory Rousseau, who else do you have that's been very consistent? Nobody. So bringing in someone like a Joey Bosa, you get to see where he is. Because, again, like I've said before in previous episodes, Joey Bosa is not the same person. Injuries have completely derailed him for the last 3 and 4 years. And that's exactly why the Chargers did not decide to keep him, because why? You were way too expensive and your production wasn't meeting the contract that you were currently under. So they had to get rid of you. On top of that, your partner, Khalil Mack, was doing way more than you and was being more consistent and more productive than you. So, I mean, come on. Now, me personally, I would have thought he would have went to his brother, or I would have thought he would have went to the Dolphins, because Those were the only two teams that everybody was saying that was really interested in Joey Bosa. But clearly the Bills came out the blue and, gave him the deal that they gave him. Now, Grady Jarrett's situation is a little bit weird because the Falcons wanted him to take a pay cut. He said no, and so they just released him, which sort of goes into what's going on with the Falcons, but I don't understand why you would let him go just because he refused not to take a pay cut. I'm not going to take a pay cut when, for one, I'm one of the leaders of the defense. I've been consistent. Sure, I may have found year, but it doesn't even matter because why? I'm still that guy. So why in the world should I have to take a pay cut? And guess what? He bounced back and went to another team in a better situation. Now he's with the Bears. 3 years, $43.5 million, $28.5 million guaranteed, $14.5 million a year. That's not bad. Even with his stats, 53 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 32 quarterback pressures. I don't care what anyone says. Grady Jarrett is still that guy. And he will always be that guy. Why? Because he's always been very productive. Now, when you look at his stats, you're probably thinking, oh, well, that's not really productive. No, it's not the stats. You got to look at the tape. You're talking about somebody that is getting through and, a guard and a center is basically double teaming and he's still finding a way to get through. This is somebody that you're pairing him with Montez Sweat and Tremaine Edmonds and Jalen Johnson and Jaquan Brisker and, all those other guys. That's a really productive defense. The Bears right now have really positioned themselves to be in a really good place. That division as a whole has really positioned themselves to be very competitive. I think the only question mark that we have is just the Lions. And that's only because they lost both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn this offseason. Outside of that, I think this is going to be a very competitive division. Now, when we look at Evan Ingram, which was somewhat of a shocker, he goes to the Broncos. 2 years, $23 million, $8 million signing bonus, $16.5 million guaranteed, $11.5 million a year. I did not expect for him to be released by the Jaguars, but he goes into a way better situation. This is another weapon for Bo Nix to throw to, okay? You have Cortland Sutton, as long as he doesn't, hold out or anything. Evan Ingram, Bo Nix. This is a pretty good team. This is a really good team. People are tired of losing. And some people just say, you know what, to hell with it, we'll just go somewhere else. And that's exactly what Evan Ingram did, and he found himself another bag, okay? Talanoa Hufanga goes to the Broncos. Really good deal. 3 years, $45 million, $20 million guaranteed, $15 million a year. That's not bad at all. When we look at his stats, 38 tackles, he was targeted 8 times for 7 receptions for 112 yards. He's been one of those rising stars when it comes to safeties. And he probably could have demanded more money, but for him to take this deal is really good. He's still a really good competitive safety, and I think he's going to get better as his career progresses. Now, when we go to the Justin Fields situation, I know it's a sensitive subject for some Steelers fans, but I'm going to break things down in a way that you guys are going to be able to understand it. So before I get to that point, let's just get into the contract. Okay, 2 years, $40 million, a $15 million signing bonus, $30 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $20 million a year. Okay, his stats: 1,106 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, and 6.9 yards per attempt. Now, when we look at this situation, okay, in some ways this was a blessing in disguise for Justin Fields, and I'm going to explain why. Because had he played the entire season, I don't think he would have been able to get the money that he got. But because he played only 6 games, I think it left a lot of question marks for a lot of teams to say, you know what, I like that. I want to invest into that. Now, when we look at it from the Steelers' perspective, in his mind, he got screwed over. In his mind, he was never given the keys to the kingdom. Because once he was traded, what was the first thing that Mike Tomlin said? Russell Wilson has pole position of this team. Every single time. Every single time he was brought on for an interview or anytime anybody asked him anything related to quarterback, it was always what? Russell Wilson has the pole position. So automatically, you've already doubted me. You've already eliminated me from competition. You've already set the standard and you've already put the line in the sand and say, guess what? No matter what you do, no matter what stat you put up, Russell Wilson is going to be the guy. We're going to go back to Russell Wilson. And so for him, that probably, made him feel some type of way. And then not to mention, 6 games into the season, you pull the plug for me. And then basically for the rest of the season, I'm on the bench. That's not good. Especially during that 5-game stretch, you would have thought, hey, make a switch. Maybe put Justin Fields in. See what happens. No, not at all. And so for him, he probably was like, you know what, to hell with them. The Jets are offering me a better bag. I get to play with my former teammate, Garrett Wilson. Let's see what happens. Now, the only problem that I have with this situation is the offensive coordinator. I don't think that offensive coordinator and Justin Fields are really going to mesh together because that offensive coordinator, his system is basically Ben Johnson's 2.0 with a few little tweaks and whatnot. And Justin Fields isn't really that fast of a processor, so I don't know how that's really going to work, but only time will tell, right? And so when we look at this, I don't even think the Steelers were willing to really offer him the type of contract that he just signed with the Jets. I think they were going to try to lowball him and basically try to say, hey, listen, we'll bring you, some good weapons and then see what happens. And, maybe something can work in your favor. And, we'll give you sort of like a trial just to, see what happens. And then we'll go from there. Like, it could have been that, or they probably didn't promise him the starting job. And so if I'm Justin Fields, that's what I want. I feel like I am a starting caliber quarterback. And I will not argue with anybody that says otherwise. But the fact of the matter is, the Steelers screwed him. The Steelers did not give him the adequate chance to actually really showcase his skill set. If the Steelers would have said, hey, listen, we're going to give you the first half of the season, and then, Russ, you get the second half of the season, and then you guys come to a decision, okay, fine. But you just deciding, hey, 6 games, we're going to pull the plug from you, when you only had 2 bad games, unacceptable. That's Mike Tomlin. Now let's get into the divisional rodeo, folks, and we are in the NFC South. So you already know how my spill goes, okay? Salary, free agents, draft picks, positions of need, and candidates for either restructure, extension, trades, or cuts. So we're going to start with the Saints, all right? So you have a salary of $17.1 million with a rollover cap of $2.9 million, okay? Your free agents: Paulson Aladebo, Chase Young, Juwan Johnson, Will Harris, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Peyton Turner, and Dante Pettis, just to name a few. Your draft picks: of course, you got your first, your second, you have 2 third-round picks, you have 2 fourth-round picks, you have a 6th, and you have a 7th. You don't have a 5th-round pick. Positions of need: wide receiver, edge, corner, tight end, interior offensive line, and running back. This is what I'll say to start things off, specifically with the cap. I think the number one red flag for this job was when a lot of those coaches decided not to take the interviews for the Saints. Once you saw Mike McCarthy and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and all those other coaches basically take their name out of the hat for this position, that lets you know that, for one, they didn't like how things were probably structured, and 2, they don't like it how you're about to inherit a team where, for one, you'll have little to no cap space. Sure, you have a high draft pick, but you don't have a lot of concrete pieces that you can build off of, okay? Because for the last few years, what have we seen with the Saints? You find a way to do a whole bunch of restructures, you move a whole bunch of money, and you do this and you do that, and you find a way just to create just a little bit of cap space where you can make 1 or 2 free agent signings, and then you can sign your rookies. At some point, you're going to have to clean your books. And I think they should have went through the process of cleaning their books this year. Because since the whole Drew Brees thing and whatnot, you've been doing the same method. Restructure after restructure after restructure after restructure after restructure. Pushing money down the road further and further and further. Well, guess what? At some point, the bus has to stop. and it should have stopped here. Now, granted, you have a high first round pick. You have the ninth pick in the draft. Great, that's cool. But if you're a coach, most of the times you inherit either one or two different situations: a team that has a whole bunch of cap space, like the Patriots, or a team that has a high draft pick, or the rarity where you inherit both, where you have a high draft pick and you have a lot of cap space, the Patriots. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if it has to do something with the GM and whatnot, but whatever the case may be, it is something that I think needs to be talked about more and more, because the Saints as a whole just have to go through a rebuild. Just do it. It's not going to hurt you. What do you have to lose? Drew Brees is gone. Sean Payton is gone. That whole crew is gone. All you have left is Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill might be, out the window. Just saying. Sure, you have Cam Jordan and you have Demario Davis, but they're up in age. They probably want to go somewhere and probably win. Why in the world would you not want to give them that chance? But when we go to positions of need, okay, wide receiver, edge, cornerback, tight end, interior offensive line, and running back, okay, for wide receiver, you can go about this a few different ways. Outside of Chris Olave, who else do you really have? Exactly, nobody. So you can either address it high in the first round, get someone like a Matthew Golden, a Emeka Egbuka, for instance, or you can take a swing at maybe the round 2 or round 3 range and probably get one of those type of receivers, which I probably would do personally. But you do have to bring in somebody else than just having Chris Olave. And Chris Olave has been having a lot of concussions lately, so that's something that you have to factor in as well. So I think they need to be going after someone like a Matthew Golden or a Savion Williams or Restrepo from Miami, or Jaden Higgins or Jack Besh or any of those different guys. But you need to bring in somebody else instead of just throwing the ball 20 and 30 and 40 times to Chris Olave, okay? Edge, you have to bring in a younger pass rusher. Sure, you have Cam Jordan and you have, Chase Young. Great. But you need somebody else, all right? You need a little bit more production out of this defensive line because you invested a lot into it. Sure, you have Brian Breesy. You now got David Godchild. You got Chase Young. You still have Cam Jordan. But you need one more really productive young, and I'm going to emphasize young, pass rusher. Because if you don't, it's basically pointless. We are seeing now that teams want to invest more into pass rushers because why? They are the ones that are the game closers. They are the ones that are the game changers. They are the ones that can change the tide of an entire game with just one play. Exactly why the Eagles won, because of their pass rush, of their defensive line specifically. Now, when we look at corner, I think you do have to prioritize corner high simply because, okay, you have Kool-Aid McKinstry, but who else do you have? And you just lost Paulson Adebo to free agency, so you need to bring somebody in. Now, for outside corner, you may have to address that in the first round. You may have a chance to address it in the second round, but do you really want to take that chance? I don't know. Because in the second round, you'll have Darian Porter, you'll have who else? Quincy Riley. You may have Maxwell Harrison. You'll have a few people. Now in the first round, of course, you may have Will Johnson, you may have Siobhan Revel, Trey Amos, Benjamin Morrison. You'll have options, but you're going to have to make a significant investment into corner at some point, whether it be this year or next year. You're going to have to do it. Tight end. I feel like this could be your first pick, simply because this is a really good tight end class. Okay, you have Tyler Warren, you have Colston Loveland, you have Harold Fannin Jr., you have the tight end from Miami, you have a few other tight ends that are really productive. You have Mason Taylor as well. So you have options at tight end, and I think you need to do that now because Taysom Hill is coming from a serious injury, and I think it's time that, you move off of Taysom Hill. Because right now, he's getting up in age, and he's coming back from a very serious injury. And so I think you go a little bit younger. Interior offensive line. You have options but your options are possibly first rounders, unfortunately. Gray Zabel, that's a first rounder. Tyler Booker, that's a first rounder. Okay. Sure, there's a few other, really good interior offensive linemen in the later parts of the draft, but it's like those are the two that you probably want to go after. Now, do I think one of them will be drafted in the first round? Yes, for sure. Do I think one of them may slip? Yes, there's a possibility. But if they do, it's not by a lot. Okay, they may be the first pick in the second round for all we know. But I do feel like you do have to make that investment at some point, and I think this is the year to do it. Running back, yes. I think you do need to bring in a running back, not to take Alvin Kamara's job, but to basically help him. With this running back class being as good as it is, you need to go and get one. You can get Caleb Johnson, Devin Neal, Taj Brooks, Damian Martinez, who else? RJ Harvey. Like, you have a plethora of options when it comes to running back. Honestly, when it comes to any of these positions. But the question is, which position do you want to address first in the draft? Me personally, I would say tight end. I think if you get Tyler Warren with Derek Carr, I think that would help out a lot. Instead of, putting Chris Olave in harm's way and throwing basically, hospital balls at him. Like, no. Bringing a tight end, a really productive, tight end, I think that would actually help out a lot. Wide receiver, you can address that maybe the second or third round. Same thing with corner if you want to. Edge, you could probably do the same thing as well. You have Landon Jackson. You have Mike Green, which he may be a first round pick. You have James Pierce. You have the pass rusher from, Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot what his first name is. I know his last name is like Robinson. Like, you have options. You have a whole lot of options. Now, when we look at candidates for restructure, extension, trades, and cuts, Taysom Hill, I'm sorry, I have to cut you. Like I just said a few minutes ago, you're coming back from a serious leg injury, and you're getting up in age, and we need to get. And this is a really good tight end class, so your replacement will be drafted fairly high. On to Chris Olave. So his market value was a little bit of a shocker. Okay, his market value is 3 years, $53.4 million, which is $17.8 million a year. I would have thought it would have been like 20, maybe 25 million, but Spot Red may, see something that I don't see. But I think if you do this now, you save yourself some money. Because if he has a baller of a season, we all know you're going to have to pay more. You may have to pay twice, maybe even 3 times more, okay? Chase Young, extension. His market value, 4 years, $70.1 million, which is $17.5 million a year. His actual extension was 3 years, $51 million, which is $17 million a year. So, all in all, it was around the same ballpark, which is not really bad. He's definitely trying to find a home, and I think New Orleans has definitely brought the best out of him since being with Washington. So, let's just see what happens with this, okay? Now, all in all, from a team perspective, I think the number one thing that the Saints need to do is clean up your books. You have gone way too long of trying to just kick the can and trying to figure out, okay, how many restructures do we need to do just to be under cap compliance? No. It's time for you to chip away some of that fat and get rid of any of those large contracts that are plaguing you and clean up your books so that you can have an abundance of cap space. That way you can really make some moves and really position yourself to be a really good team like you have been in the past. But you can't do that if you continue to do restructure. At some point, that snowball is going to go from a little baby snowball to just this behemoth of a monster. And you don't want that. You don't want to be like the Browns, who are basically in cap hell every single year and then find a way to get out of it just so they can go right back into it. You don't want that. Now, you did bring in a good coach. Let's see what happens with that. A little bit optimistic with it, but a little bit worried, but we'll see what happens. Now the Panthers, salary $36.1 million, rollover cap of $490,368. Okay, your free agents: Andy Dalton, Austin Corbett, Brady Christensen, Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, Felipe Franks, David Moore, Mike Boone, Deshaun Williams, Cam Gill, Shaq Thompson, Mike Jackson, Caleb Farley, and Xavier Woods, just to name a few. Okay, your draft picks. You got your first, your second, your third. You have 2 4th-round picks. You have 3 5th-round picks. You don't have a 6th, but you do have a 7th-round pick. Okay. Positions of need. I was a little bit stuck with this one. Okay. Wide receiver, edge, running back. I was going to put tight end, but I was like, They re-signed Tommy Tremble. I mean, they had Jatavion Sanders as well. Two really good, productive tight ends. No need. So when we look at this, me personally, and this is just my opinion. I could be wrong. I think they've done a good job this offseason so far. You've addressed the defense hard. You re-signed your number one corner. You've got some, defensive linemen. You've brought in Trevon Moehrig. You've done some things, okay? But at this point, it's time for you to shift your focus to offense, because that has been your problem for the last few years now, is the offense. And so if we really want this Bryce Young experiment to work, you have to give him adequate weapons, especially with him being a smaller quarterback. You have to give him better protection, and you have to give him better weapons. That is the only way that he is going to be able to survive. He showed a lot of grit after being benched, because during that first half of the season, I was definitely under the impression that he was going to get traded, because he was not playing well. He looked like a deer in headlights at some games, and he was getting just destroyed left and right. But the Panthers believed in him. They gave him time to work on his game and try to figure out, okay, what can we do to make you better? And ultimately, it paid off. That second half of the season for the Panthers was amazing. They looked like a team that was together, that they could defeat any team that they was going up against. That game against the Giants in, either London or Germany, it was a really good game. That was a down-to-the-wire type of game. That showed you, okay, Bryce Young has it. You just have to build off of that momentum. And so right now, you're at a crossroads where you have to figure out, okay, do we want to emphasize edge in the first round, or do we want to emphasize wide receiver in the first round? But the problem with this, as I've said before in previous episodes, and I will continue to say this until the birds come home, the receiver class in the first round specifically is not as strong as it has been in the last few years. But with the edge class, there's a lot of question marks with a lot of these prospects, because some of these prospects were both outside linebackers and inside linebackers. Some of them were just lined up on the edge. It's a whole lot of uncertainty with certain people. Not to mention, you have certain red flags that are starting to emerge with certain players. For instance, like James Pierce. Apparently, he has a quote unquote attitude problem. I don't know why it's just coming out of all of a sudden now, but it's just a little bit weird. Okay, you have one of the Georgia edge rushers who they didn't even participate at their pro day, so you already know their draft stock is going to fall a little bit. So you're in a position where right now, yes, you have a high pick. You have the 8th pick in the draft, and you want to maximize that pick. So again, Panthers, what are you going to emphasize first? Receiver or edge? Because the problem with this is you can go about this a few different ways, honestly. You can get someone like a Mike Green, a James Pierce, Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, Jihad Campbell if you want to. You could do that. Or you could take a swing and maybe get somebody pretty high, Matthew Golden or Luther Burden or Tetsuo McMillan or Emeka Ibuka. You could do that. So I say all that to say this. Whoever they choose in the first round, they're probably going to double dip in the second round for the other position. So me personally, my thinking is they'll probably emphasize edge first, and then they'll double dip at receiver. Because right now, all they have is just Xavier Legette and Adam Thielen, both of whom are coming off of surgery. So if you get someone like a Jaden Higgins, and then you get someone else like a Jack Besh or Tez Johnson, Isaiah Bond, or who else? I know there's a few others, but Ty Felton, for instance. If you get any of those guys, and then you add to what you already have, that makes things a little bit better compared to not doing anything and just saying, okay, we did enough and let's just see what happens. No. Bryce Young is somebody that needs adequate weapons. And granted, yes, Adam Thielen is coming back and he has shown a little bit of a resurgence in his career. But at the same time, you have to continue to build and you have to give more weapons to your quarterback. Now, running back. Running back is a position that you can go about this a few different ways as well. You can address it high in the second round, or you can wait to maybe the fourth or fifth round if you want to. Okay? Because, again, this is a really big and diverse running back class. Okay? It's not just a bunch of speedy running backs or a bunch of power backs. Like, no, you have options. Okay? If you want a receiving back, there's one in there. If you want a bruiser, there's one in there. If you want someone that can do everything, there's one in there. Okay? So do you want to go after someone like a Omarion Hampton? Do you want to go after someone like a Devin Neal? Do you want to go after someone like a Taj Brooks? A RJ Harvey? Who do you want to go with? Because as of right now, I think if you build off of what you have already with Chuba Hubbard, I think that would be great. Because if you pair Chuba Hubbard with, for instance, I don't know, Caleb Johnson or Omarion Hampton or Dylan Sampson, for instance, that's a pretty good run game. So I saw that to say this. Panthers continue to build while at the same time emphasizing and giving Bryce Young more weapons. The more weapons that you give Bryce Young, the better results that you will get from him. And please, 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 rely on the run game a little bit more too. Because, again, you had Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard was playing really well. Rely on that run game. You want to be able to take the ball out of Bryce Young's hands as much as possible. You don't want him to hold on to the ball as long as he did in the first half of the season. No, just do whatever. If it means you got to give him another tight end, if it means you got to get him another running back, whatever it is, just do it, okay? But we have a little bit of some breaking news, okay? And that is Derek Stingley has reset the cornerback market, folks. So he just inked a 3-year, $90 million deal, $89 million guaranteed. He'll be making $30 million a year, okay? When we look at his stats, he was targeted 90 times and allowed 42 receptions for 444 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns, okay? He also had 5 picks. Folks, the price of the brick just went up, okay? If you're Sauce, if you're Tyreek Woolen, if you're Isaiah McDuffie, and you're looking at this, oh, this is a good day for you. Oh, yes, this is a immaculate day for you because you know why? The price just went up just a few more dollars. And J.C. Horn just reset the market this past week. And now Derek Stingley is doing it. So now the bar is set high where basically either Sauce is going to reset the market again, Isaiah McDuffie, or Tyreek Woolen. One of those three is going to reset the market. Now the question is, who's going to do it? Now I can tell you this right now, the Chiefs are not going to pay McDuffie. I can assure you they will not be able to afford him. So most likely, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets traded soon. Simply because they can't afford him. Because you're paying top dollar to Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones. So you got a lot. You got a lot of tough decisions that you have to make. You've already traded away one corner because you guys couldn't afford him. So what are you going to do now? Now for the Jets, you're staring at a bullet as well because why? You could have taken care of this prior to this happening. Now that this has happened, and if Sauce has a crazy year, we are talking about someone that is going to probably get 32, maybe 33 million a year. Same thing with Tyreek Woolen. So if I'm a GM, I'm a little bit frustrated this morning. I'm a little bit angry this morning because why? The prices went up. So that means that the agents now, they can go and say, hey, listen, my client wants to do X, Y, and Z. My client wants this number. This number just went up. Just saying, man. Just saying. But we also have some other breaking news that we have to talk about. Well, it broke last night, but it's somewhat breaking this morning now that everybody is up and whatnot. T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase will be staying in Cincinnati. Now, when we look at these deals, okay, let's just start with T. Higgins. So T. Higgins inked a 4-year, $115 million deal, which is $28.7 million a year, okay? When we look at his stats, 73 receptions for 911 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns, and 12.5 receiving yards per reception. I was right. I knew for a fact that they were not going to crest over 30 million for T. Higgins. He couldn't demand it. So, all in all, this is a really good deal for T. Higgins. Now, the thing is this. According to Jordan Schultz, the only years that are guaranteed are the first 2 years. So, what does that mean moving forward? I don't know, but that's just a little bit weird for me. Keep your eye on that, okay? Put a bookmark on that, all right? Now, Ja'Marr Chase, he done resetted the market, okay? 4 years, 161 million. He was making 40.2 million a year, okay? His receptions, his stats before we get into receptions: 127 receptions for 1,708 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns, and 13.4 receiving yards per reception. Folks, this is somebody that deserved the bag. They didn't want to pay him last year. He was like, okay, cool. It's perfectly fine. I'm going to take a risk on myself. And in doing so, he won the Triple Crown, and now he had resetted the market. Folks, Ja'Marr Chase is that guy. I hate to say it, but Ja'Marr Chase is that guy. He is a dog. And he is doing this in a very tough division. And he is holding his own. Great for them, but it's bad for the Bengals. Okay? And the reason why I say that is because you now have allocated at least 50% or maybe even more of your cap space to 3 players. Not to mention, you also have to find a way to pay who? Trey Hendrickson as well. Not to mention, because there's a little bit more with this, you haven't been really hitting on your draft picks lately, defensively. So right now, this means that for the rest of your team, everybody's probably going to be through the draft. So right now, if I'm the Bengals moving forward, if I'm the front office, scouts, whomever, we have to emphasize on better scouting and better drafting. Because that is the only way that they can mitigate the effects of these 3 deals. Because Joe Burrow is getting paid top dollar. Ja'Marr Chase is getting paid top dollar. T. Higgins is getting paid top dollar. All 3 of these guys are getting paid top dollar. And we don't even know what's going to happen with Trey Hendrickson. So you have to be able to start hitting on your draft picks. Because right now, your defense is atrocious. Okay? Mike Hilton, gone. I couldn't even who's there? Cam Taylor Britt is still there. Okay, that's fine. Out of him, who else do you have? Sure, you drafted Myles Murphy maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, that's fine. You re-signed BJ Hill from free agency. Great. But outside of that, who else do you have? Nobody. Jermaine Pratt still wants to get traded. The other linebacker, I forgot his name. I couldn't even tell you. I know his last name is Wilson. I don't even know what's going on with him. What exactly do the Bengals have defensively that makes people say that's going to be a problem? It's mainly the offense. If this team does not score 30-plus points a game, they're going to lose. They're going to lose more games than win. So it's great for T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase. It's a great day for them, but it's a horrible day for the Bengals coaching staff because now they have to figure out what can they do to maximize what they have on defense. I would not be surprised if this entire draft is just strictly just defensive players. That's how bad their defense is going to be this year. But let's get back into the divisional rodeo, folks. And we have to go over the candidates for either restructure, extension, trades, and cuts for the Panthers. You thought I was done with the Panthers? No, we are not. I just had to break that news, okay? So when we look at it, Taylor Morton, you could probably give him an extension. When we look at his market value, according to Spot Rack, it's only 3 years, $50.7 million, which is only $16.9 million a year. He's been a pretty good right tackle. I mean, you might as well just want to keep him and make him a Panther for life. Might as well. Jadeveon Clowney, extension, question mark. And the only reason why I say that is because do you want to continue to have Jadeveon Clowney on the team, or do you want to get younger and a little bit cheaper? That's the question. Because right now, his market value is estimated at 2 years, $22.8 million, which is $11.4 million a year. That's not bad. That's actually pretty good. Okay, to me, that seems team-friendly-ish. But the question is, how does the Panthers feel about Jadeveon Clowney right now? Do they want him to play out the rest of his deal, Or do they want to try to, lock things up and just have him retire as a Panther? That's the question moving forward. Iquem Ekwonu, either an extension or pick up his 5th-year option. One of the two. But if you pick up his 5th-year option, that buys you another year, but at the same time, you run the risk of possibly paying more than what you probably could have paid right now. So, all in all, you do have, 2 tackles that are probably going to be looking to get paid. You do have an edge rusher that you could probably pay right now. It's not that bad, okay? They've made a lot of investment into the defense this offseason. So, will that trend continue? I don't know. But hopefully they make some more investments into the offense, please, for Bryce Young's sake. Now, on to the Buccaneers, okay? So their salary cap, negative $9.4 million, with a rollover cap of $6.6 million. Free agents, Chase Edmonds, William Golston, Shaq Barrett, Troy Hill, Sterling Shepard. Well, actually, he just inked an extension, I think, late last week. Bryce Hall, Mike Edwards, Eric Banks, Ryan Neal, and Jordan Whitehead, just to name a few, okay? Draft picks. They got their 1st, their 2nd, their 3rd, their 4th, their 5th. They don't have a 6th, and they do have a 7th round pick, okay? Positions of need: edge, interior offensive line, tight end, corner, safety. Now, this is probably a little bit controversial, but I really don't care because why? We like controversy over here at the Football Junkies podcast, okay? So, with edge, yes, you could do it in the 1st round. The question is, who do you really like out of all of these edge rushers, okay? Because you have options. You have Mike Green, you have James Pierce, you have Michael Williams, you have Jalen Walker, you have Shamar Stewart, you have Landon Jackson, you have the pass rusher from Boston College as well, you have the pass rusher from Alabama. You have options, okay? The question is this: do you want to invest a 1st round pick in an edge? Me personally, maybe not. There is a position that I did leave out that I want to run with you guys. I just need you to walk with me for a second, okay? Just hear me out. Linebacker. Inside linebacker. And the only reason why I say that is because the Buccaneers have had a rich history when it comes to their linebackers. From Derrick Brooks to Davante David to even Derek White when he was actually playing pretty good. They have emphasized middle linebacker. And so you have someone like Jihad Campbell who you probably could get. I'm just saying. Davante David is year to year at this point in his career, okay? If you bring in someone like a Jihad Campbell, I think that would be great. Because Davante David can show him the Buccaneers way and can show him, hey, this is how I, run the defense. This is how I, do the play calling. And, this is how I work with, this side and that side. All those different things. Because outside of Jihad Campbell and outside of Davante David, who else do you really have on the Buccaneers as far as the interior linebacker core that you can really rely on? Sure, you can bring back Devin White, but does Devin White really want to come back? I don't know. Now, back to the position of need that I listed, okay? Interior offensive line. 2 names, Gray Zabel, Tyler Booker. Those 2 right there, to me, are 1st rounders. So the question is this: do you want to put a 1st round pick on an interior offensive lineman? Personally, I would. Because Tyler Booker, I love his mentality. His mentality is, I'm going to impose my will upon you. I am going to crush you. I am going to dominate you. From the minute the ball is hiked, I am putting you in the ground. That is his mindset. Gray Zabel, I love his positional flexibility. Gray Zabel originally is considered a tackle, but during the combine, they had him practicing a lot of interior stuff as well as doing center snaps. And then in the Senior Bowl as well, they had him inside at guard. So I think getting someone like a Gray Zabel could possibly work as well. But the question is, how high do you want to emphasize interior offensive line? Now, me personally, this is my personal opinion. I always emphasize offensive line very high because the offensive line is the nucleus of the offense. Okay? Really think about this for a second. And somebody else explained it. I forgot what video it was, but they basically broke it down like this. Without the offensive line, the quarterback can't do his job. The receiver can't get the ball. The running back can do his job. The tight end can do his job. Nobody else can do their job without what? The offensive line. So you have to make sure that the offensive line is good enough for everybody else to do their role. And so we have seen with the Eagles in recent years how they emphasize both the offensive and defensive line so much. And it's paid off phenomenally. Because why? Quarterback play is really good. So I think you have to make that investment at some point. Now, you could wait into the second or third round if you want to, because I don't think both of them will be drafted in the first round. But do you really want to take that risk? Because there are some really good interior offensive linemen in the second and third round. I'm not just discounting them as well, but it's just something about Tyler Booker and Gray Zabel that just separate themselves from everybody else. Okay. Now, when we look at tight end is something that you can address in the first 3 rounds. Okay. Now, with the first round, you have options with both Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. In the second round, you have Harold Fannin Jr., Mason Taylor, and the tight end from Miami. So you have options there, okay? Me personally, I think if you bring in someone like a Tyler Warren or Harold Fannin Jr. or Colston Loveland, I think it would make Baker Mayfield's job a lot easier because remember, when Baker was in Cleveland, who did he have at tight end? David Njoku. And so I think if you bring in someone like a David Njoku in, not saying the real David Njoku, but bringing someone like a Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, I think that will work out as well. Because this offense is really good. You just have to continue to build off of it, okay? Corner. Yes, corner. Here's the problem with corner, okay? There's not as many first-rounded graded corners in this draft. And the people that are graded as first-rounders, to me, will probably fall. And the reason why I say that is because, for one, injury red flags. Okay? Will Johnson, injury red flags. Benjamin Morrison, injury red flags. Siobhan Revel, coming off an ACL injury. Trey Amos is the only one that's not really being talked about as much that I love, that I think he could probably be a first rounder for sure. So, outside of those guys, and I forgot Ezra Thomas as well, but some people say Ezra Thomas is a second rounder. I don't see how. Jahdae Barron and Maxwell Harrison, to me, are probably first round and graded corners. Okay, everybody else you can make an argument for. Okay, but I feel like those are for sure first rounders in my book. Okay, I think you do need to make a high investment into corner at this point. But at the same time, if you don't want to address in the first round, that's perfectly fine. You can address in the second round because you have Darian Porter, you have Kobe Bryant, you have Quincy Riley, you have Ezra Thomas, because I think Ezra Thomas may fall. I think Siobhan Revel may fall. I think Benjamin Morrison may fall out of the first round as well. So you have options there as well. But I feel like you do need to make an emphasis into, okay. Now, safety's a little bit tricky. Because sure, you have Antoine Winfield Jr., but you still need to bring in somebody else. Okay, Jordan Whitehead, I don't think they're probably going to bring him back. If they do, it'll probably be somewhat of like a mid-camp signing, honestly. But if that doesn't happen, I feel like you do need to draft one. And so you do have options. You have E-Man from South Carolina. You know what I'm saying? You can get him. That could be your first rounder, okay? You have Malachi Starks. You also have the safety from Penn State. You have the safety from Texas, Makuba, I think is his last name. You have Malachi Moore from Alabama. You have options at safety. And so if you don't want to address in the first round, that's perfectly fine. I feel like all those other safeties will be available in the second and third round as well. But all in all, I think the point that I'm trying to get with the Buccaneers is you have flexibility with what positions that you want to address first, okay? I think that's the main takeaway of this. Because they're in a position where, sure, they don't have to address this position or that position high in the first round. They can wait if they really want to. But at the same time, I feel like whatever the position that you're trying to address first in the first round, I think you need to be a little bit aggressive with it. Okay, because you have the 19th pick, which is sort of like middle of the pack, sort of low. But at the same time, you're still in a good spot where if you wanted to, you can move up 2 or 3 spots and you can go and get your guy. That's just me personally, okay? Now, when we look at candidates for restructure, extension, trades, and cuts, Me personally, I feel like the Buccaneers have to find a way to create some cap space because again, free agency is not over with. Okay, that's just the first wave. We all know the first wave is somewhat of the biggest wave. Okay, that's when our phones are blowing up and everything. But you still have free agency. So with that in mind, you want to have a little bit of money to play with. Okay, so Cade Otton, you can give him an extension. Okay, his market value is not that high. 3 years, 36.5 million, which is only 12.2 million a year. That's not bad. That's actually really good. Okay. Baker Mayfield, I feel like you can restructure his deal, create a little bit of cap space. Vita Vea, you can either do an extension or you can do a restructure with his deal. Sterling Shepard, we already know he signed an extension with the Buccaneers to stay with him. But all in all, I trust the Buccaneers. Okay, the Buccaneers in recent years have definitely made a great shift. Ever since the Tom Brady years, we have seen more consistency with the Buccaneers. We have seen better play from the Buccaneers. I think overall we've just seen a better version of the Buccaneers because there was a point in time where they were somewhat of the stepping stool for their division for the entire league because they can never get their act together. And so now that they won a Super Bowl in recent years and they done went through, what they went through, I think they're in a really good space. And I think if they continue to build off of what they have right now, I think they could be legitimate contenders. Because let's not forget, they've been having the Eagles' number in recent years. They've been beating up on a lot of these top NFC teams. So they are still a dark horse in my mind until something crazy happens, okay? But do not sleep on the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have been giving people trouble in the last few years, okay? Now on to the Falcons, okay? The Falcons, okay? These guys, what can we say that has already never been said about the Falcons? Choke artist, maybe? 28-3? Sorry, Falcons, I just had to do that. You guys choked in the Super Bowl. Ah man, you guys. Okay, so your salary negative 1.5 million with a rollover cap of 6 million. Your free agents: Matthew Judon, Justin Simmons, Lorenzo Carter, Micaiah Abernathy, Robert Burns, Damone Harris, Antonio Hamilton, Harrison Hand, just to name a few. Okay, your draft picks: you got your first, your second. You don't have a third. You have your fourth. You have a fifth. You don't have a sixth, but you have 2 7th-round picks. Okay. Positions of need, everything. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Let me be serious. I'm trying to be serious, okay? Positions of need, defensive line, wide receiver, tight end, center, and safety, okay? Here is the problem with the Falcons, okay? You allocated money to the wrong person. You should have never given that money to Kirk Cousins because now you guys are stuck in a nasty situation where right now he wants to go. But the problem is, one of his bonuses just kicked in this past weekend, so that's $10 million that's just been wired to his account. So right now, you guys are trying to figure out exactly how can you make this marriage work. Because at first, it was all sunshine and rainbows, and everybody was loving each other and posting everything and whatnot. Now it's just a nasty situation where both of you guys are just sleeping in separate beds and trying to figure out how can we just mingle with one another. So here is the situation. Sure, you are in a good space somewhat, but the problem is you got to emphasize a lot on your defense because your defense was atrocious. And it also doesn't help that you just let Grady Jarrett just walk. You didn't even try to figure something out with his contractual situation. You just let him walk. So now you basically have to figure out what you're going to do with your defensive line as well as linebacker, corner, and a few other spots. Sure, you brought in Mike Hughes, which was a pretty good signing and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is the defense was not able to create a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And it showed. Now, when they made the trade for Matthew Judon, I was under the impression, Judon is going to have this great year. He's going to show why he's still one of those guys. All those things and more. He didn't do that. He did not do that. So now you have to figure out how can we make this defense better than what it was the last 2 years? The question is this. How high do you want to emphasize your defensive needs? Because safety, you could address that high. Defensive line. You could address that at any point in the draft. Just being honest here, okay? But you have to do something. You have to be able to emphasize on creating more pressure and getting after the quarterback because you weren't able to do it. And that is the only way that you are able to really win games at this point. If you don't have a legitimate pass rush, guess what? You're finito. You're done. You're not going to be playing in February, and you're definitely not going to be playing in January. All right? We've seen it multiple times. So right now, if I am the Falcons, I probably want to emphasize defensive line high. And I'm probably going to double, maybe even triple dip at defensive line. And the only reason why I say that is because this is a really good defensive line class. You have options, okay, both first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth round if you really want to. So you have to make that emphasis on defensive line. Now you have Kenneth Grant, you have Derek Harmon, you have Mason Graham, which I don't think they'll be able to get Mason Graham, but I've seen crazier things. You have Aeneas Pebbles, you have Derek Alexander, you have Jordan Phillips, you have Alfred Collins. You have a plethora of defensive linemen that you need to pluck at least two of them. Same thing with pass rush. I feel like you probably need to get an edge rusher as well because I don't think you guys are bringing back Matthew Judon. So you need to bring in somebody else. And you really need to just figure out what you're going to do with this defense. Like, I knew they were serious about the defense when reports were coming out during the combine that they have basically shifted all of their coaching focus to the defensive prospects, not the offensive prospects. That let me know, this whole defense is about to go through a 360 makeover, okay? It's about to be like that one show back in the day, I think, what was it? Extreme Home Makeover, where like they send them away for like a week, like a weekend or something, and they're doing all this hard work and rebuilding their house, and then once everything is over, they say, move this bus. The bus moves. It's a whole bunch of emotions. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but that's basically what needs to happen with the Falcons at this point. Because right now, you guys are in a situation where, for one, you're trying to figure out exactly if Kirk Cousins wants to stay on or not, while at the same time trying to just make things a little bit more comfortable with this whole transition process between Arthur Smith and their new head coach. Like, it's a lot of transition. It's a lot of change going on in a very small amount of time, okay? Some people have left. Some people have been traded. Some people are still on the team. But everyone is still trying to find their way. So the question is, what do you guys want to emphasize first in the draft? Okay? Because right now, there's only maybe there's maybe like 2 or 3 positions of need right now that you probably could legitimately address in the first round. Wide receiver, to me, I feel like you have to do it in the first round. And the only reason why I say that is because the amount of money that you gave Kirk Cousins, you could have gotten a number 1 receiver for that. Because right now, you still don't know what you have with Kyle Pitts. Sure, you have Drake London. Sure, you have, what's his name? I know I'm forgetting his name. I can't even remember his name. It'll probably come back to me in maybe about 30 seconds or whatever. But you have Bijan Robinson, you have Kyle Pitts, and you have Drake London. More. You need more. That is the only way this team can go higher. So me personally, I feel like if they get someone like a Matthew Golden, I think that would be lethal. I think if they get someone like a Swiss Army knife in Emeka Buka, that would be lethal as well. But you do need to bring in at least maybe 2 receivers, at least, possibly. Defensive line, we've already went over that. Tight end, I'm going to be controversial. You should address in the first round. I think you should. I think at this point, you have question marks with Kyle Pitts. You would have thought by now Kyle Pitts would have had at least 1 dominant season, but he hasn't. So right now, you have to either figure out if he can be, at least workable at receiver or something. You have to figure out exactly what you want to do. And so me personally, I'm drafting a tight end in the first round. I'm getting either Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, one of those guys, and we're going to have competition. We're going to figure out exactly, are you tight end 1 or not? Because right now you have all the intangibles to be a top 10 tight end, but you have not shown it. I don't know if it's because of a new system. I don't know if he's still trying to get his feet wet. I don't know what's going on. But at this point, There's still a lot of question marks with Kyle Pitts, so I think it's just time for the team to just go in a different direction. Me personally, I would have thought Kyle Pitts would have been traded last season, but clearly, I think I was going to say the Panthers. Clearly, the Falcons still believe in him, and clearly they still see something in him that they like. So let's just see what happens with that. Now, center is tricky, and I only say that because I haven't really looked at a lot of center prospects. I do know during the combine there was maybe about 5 to 10 guards that were practicing at center. I do know Gray Zabel and Tyler Booker were one of the two that was pulled to the side to be tried out as guard. My only problem with this, I would have tried to lock up Drew Dalman. I would have not allowed him to hit free agency only because now he's in a better situation. Now he's the center for the Bears, and that Bears offensive line looks a whole lot better. Granted, I understand you put a lot of money behind Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom. I understand that. But at the same time, it is very rare for centers to hit free agency. And if they do, it's one or two things. Either they're too expensive, injury prone, or they're just not that good. But Drew Dalman has been a really good center. So center is something that you could probably address maybe in the third, maybe fourth round if you really wanted to. But I'll probably have to look at center prospects probably this week and probably give you my honest opinion about a few. But safety, as I've said before, safety is something that you can address, in the first 3 rounds if you really wanted to. The question is, do you value Malachi Starks and E-Man over all of your other positional needs or not? Because me personally, I feel like defensive line, wide receiver, and tight end, and maybe even center, maybe a little bit higher on my draft board than maybe safety. I feel like you could probably get someone like a Malachi Moore, and I think you can make it work because you do have Jesse Bates. So I mean that is a pillar back there in the safety room. You just need to get somebody else. Now, when we look at candidates for restructure, extension, trades, or cuts, I would have said Kirk Cousins for a trade, but at this point, no one wants to pick up that contract. It's a bad contract. His cap hit this year, $40 million. And then next year, $57.5 for both 2026 and 2027. Okay? His base salary this year is only $27.5, and then next year it's $35 million. It's a bad contract. And it's been a bad contract. And I don't think nobody is going to be willing to give up compensation to get Kirk Cousins at this point. It was a flop of a free agency signing. Now, I understand a lot of people want to try and, bolster up their team as quickly as possible. And I understand that and I get that. But why in the world would you pay the amount of money that you paid for Kirk Cousins and then in that same year for the draft, you draft Michael Penix high? What sense does that make? And you didn't even deliberate it with Kirk Cousins. So in his mind, he's thinking, oh, I'm going to be the starting quarterback moving forward. No, your replacement is right behind you, buddy. So at this point, I think you may have to cut your losses, take on that dead cap hit, and just let him go. Because he continues to emphasize that he feels like he is a starting caliber quarterback. Now, we all know Kirk Cousins went through a dry spell last year where he didn't throw not one touchdown. So, as much as I would love for him to stay and he can be a mentor to Michael Penix and he could be a good backup option, at this point, you have to figure out what you can do with this contract before we move forward with anything. Because right now, this contract is a major roadblock for any team to be interested in trying to make a move for Kirk Cousins. Now, when we look at, Drake London, I would say an extension. Get it over with now, especially with Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins getting their deal. Get it over with now. His market value, 4 years, $95.3 million, which is only $23.8 million a year. That's not bad. That's actually really good. Drake London isn't a 1. Drake London is probably a 2 or 3 on anybody else's team. Just saying. Just listen. Don't fight me, please. Please. Caden Ellis, extension. Ray McLeod, extension. Caleb McGarry, extension. His market value, 3 years, $51.8 million, which is $17.3 million a year. These are fairly good contracts. These are not, exuberant contracts, okay? Chris Lindstrom, I feel like you can give him a restructure because, man, oh man, his contract is crazy, okay? His base salary this year, 14.5, and then the next year, 16, and then 2027, 15.7, and then 2028, 17.2. His cap hits this year, 22.2 million, and then next year is 23.7, and then the year after that is 25.5, and then the year after that is 21.5. I feel like you could probably do something with that contract. I feel like it's a little bit more easier to work with. That way you could probably maybe convert a lot of his money into a signing bonus or do something with it. But the Falcons have to figure out a way to, one, create cap space, be more consistent when it comes to their drafting and free agency signings, while at the same time just be a better football team. Because right now, you guys have just been flopping at quarterback since Matt Ryan left. You didn't want to get Lamar, which was by far the dumbest decision that you could have ever did. And instead, you decide to be in the sweepstakes for Deshaun Watson. You get burned with that. Okay, cool. So now you get Arthur Smith, and now Arthur Smith doesn't want to draft a quarterback, even though he could have drafted Justin Fields. And instead, he gets Desmond Ridder, and then he gets Marcus Mariota, and then he gets Taylor Heineke. Did that work? No, it didn't. And so now you're in a situation where, guess what? You paid X amount of dollars to Kirk Cousins, while at the same time you drafted Michael Penix high. And now you're trying to figure out exactly what are you going to do moving forward at quarterback. You have been whiffing on quarterback hard. It is time for you guys to figure out exactly what direction you want this team to go to. Because right now, you guys have been very mediocre for the last maybe 4 or 5 years. It's time to get your act together. The problem with the Falcons is, sure, you have a lot of good pieces, but you've been going through a lot of transition within the past maybe 4 to 5 years. You know, the Arthur Smith and just how horrible that time was, and now you got the new head coach. Like, it's a lot of turnover. I don't see being this super dominant team that they used to be in the early 2000s and somewhat in the 2010s. I don't see it no more. They're going to have to show me that they're really serious. Now, depending on what they do in the draft, will definitely let me know how serious they are about winning. Because I think if they address a lot of their needs fairly high in the draft, I think they can position themselves really good. I do feel like they can be the third best team in their division. I really do. But you got to get your act together, man. You got to figure out what you want to do with quarterback. You got to bring in more weapons for Michael Penix. You have to figure out what you're doing with Kyle Pitts. If you don't believe in him, send him somewhere else. And for the love of God, please get adequate pass rushers for this defense. We all know and we all see that, guess what? Pass rushers are getting the big bucks because why? They are the game changers, game closers, and they are game wreckers, okay? And you don't have one on your team right now. I know I was forgetting a few other things that we had to talk about because I know I was probably skipping around, but we have to talk about the love triangle that is with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and the Vikings and Giants and Steelers, okay? So at this point, there's a lot of uncertainty with that entire situation. You have reports that are detailing and saying that, you know, the Vikings are like lurking around for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is waiting to see if the Vikings, you know, want to try to do business with him. If not, he may try to go into retirement. You got a picture of him on a beach with some old school Apple headphones staring into the sunset. You just have a whole lot of drama. So I'm going to try to break it down as best as possible. I'm just going to give my opinions on this, okay? So here's the thing. So with the Russell Wilson situation specifically, I feel like, and I want to emphasize this, I don't have any sources, I feel like the one thing that really killed his chances of going back to the Steelers was when his camp leaked out the report that him and Arthur Smith was not getting along. I think that was the worst thing that he could have ever did because why? It basically blacklisted you from the Steelers because you had people in the front office and within the locker room that were feeling some type of way about it because it's like, bro, why would you put out something like that? And so I feel like had he not put that out, I think he would have already been the Steeler by now. But because he did that, I think they sort of like put him on the back burner. He went to Cleveland, didn't get a deal. He went to New York, didn't get a deal. And New York is still bringing in people. New York brought in Jameis Winston and they brought in Joe Flacco for a visit. So I say all that to say this. Russ, you sort of burned yourself, bro. Because you thought by you putting out that story that the Steelers would probably run to you and say, hey, we can still try to make this thing work. No. But if I'm the Steelers at this point, I feel like you have to make a decision at this point because you have continued to go through a phase of waiting and it has burned you. Last year, you waited all the way to the last minute for Brandon Ayuk. And just when that trade was going to go down, guess what happened? He backed off and he stayed with the 49ers. And it burned you. And for that entire season, you were trying to basically do patchwork with the receiving room. Now you're doing it with the most important position on the entire team at quarterback. Do you really want to deal with a 42-year-old quarterback? I don't think you really want to. Because, granted, you do have DK Metcalf, you do have George Pickens, you have Pat Freiermuth, you have Jalen Warren, and you have all these other pieces, and you have really good defense and whatnot. But the problem is this. There's still a lot of uncertainty with your tackles. This is probably going to be the first full season that we're going to see Broderick Jones at left tackle. And Troy Fautanu is still recovering from his ACL injury. So you still have a lot of uncertainty at the tackle position. And then not to mention, we all know that Aaron Rodgers likes to do his things his way. I don't know if that's really going to work in Pittsburgh, personally. I don't even know if that's really going to work in New York as well. So it's just a lot of just foolishness with this entire situation. And then when we look at Aaron Rodgers, okay, we don't know what's going on. He's basically gone quiet. Nobody really knows. And so the running feeling around a lot of people is make a decision. Adam Schefter said it the best way possible. Make a decision. It doesn't take you this long to come to a decision. Either you want to play or you don't. And I feel like that is the running notion with a lot of these people that are in these front offices. Either you want to play or you don't. Because right now, we are getting closer and closer to the draft. And we have two teams right now who they definitely need a quarterback. But one of them is in the position to get their quarterback. The other one isn't. So now, if you're the Steelers, sure, you're playing the waiting game, but you're getting a little bit desperate. You're getting a little bit anxious because why? All you have on your team right now is Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. That's not enough. And we all know that this quarterback draft class is not that good. And please, for the love of God, for any person that continues to say that Jackson Dart is a first-round pick, please, please, please stop it. You are lying to yourself. You are getting paid by his agents. You are getting paid by the people that work for him to promote these type of fake news. Please stop it. Okay? But back to reality, all right? Now for the Vikings, I don't feel a reason for you to try to go and get Aaron Rodgers. You have J.J. McCarthy. Run with J.J. McCarthy. Give him a legitimate chance. Because right now, all Aaron Rodgers is doing is just following the coattail of Brett Favre. Okay? You were great with the Packers. You went to the Jets. You really wasn't that good. And then you possibly could go back to the Vikings. And then everything is all, rainbows and unicorns. No. Either you want to play or you don't. Because right now, time is ticking. And teams are waiting to do business with you. But are you ready to do business with them? That's all I have to say about that. It would be crazy if by the time we're done with this episode, news drops about the whole Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers situation. That would be crazy. But you never know with the Football Junkies podcast. But we do have to talk about one more thing, and that is Cooper Kupp coming back home, folks. That's right. He is going to the Seattle Seahawks. He inked a 3-year, $45 million deal, which is $15 million a year. His stats: 67 receptions for 710 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, and 10.6 yards per reception. This is what I will say. It's going to be completely honest with you. The Seahawks are out of their damn mind for paying Cooper Kupp $15+ million. I'm sorry. If this was Cooper Kupp after he won the Triple Crown, oh yeah, for sure. Perfectly fine. But in recent years, he has not been able to stay healthy. He really hasn't been as consistent. And you're seeing somewhat of a decline in his play. I'm sorry. The Seahawks paid $15 million for him just because of his name. It wasn't because of his play. It wasn't because of what he's done lately. It's because of his name, Cooper Kupp. There was a market for him. I do know there were teams like, the Cowboys that were like semi-interested in him. I know the Broncos had some interest in him. The Patriots. There were a few teams that had some level of interest in Cooper Kupp. Everyone was waiting to see what was going to be his number. Now, me personally, I would have thought he would have taken less to join a contender. For instance, the Chiefs or the Eagles or the Ravens or the Bills or any of those different types of teams. But for you to take $15 million with the Seahawks, really, dude, I just don't know how to really feel about this. Sure, the Seahawks will have JSN and Cooper Kupp, but it's like, bro, you just had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and you let those two go, and then you bring in Cooper Kupp. I don't know about this. But I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys like what you're listening, please, 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 please make sure that you guys download the episode. Leave a 5-star, 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 5-star review on anywhere and everywhere that you listen to podcasts at, okay? We are available on RSS feed. We're available on Apple Podcasts. We're available on Spotify and other podcasting platforms. Okay, if you want to find out where they are, you can go on our RSS feed. It'll have all the links to all those different places. Okay, we're also available on iHeartRadio as well. I forgot to mention that. Okay, for my TikTok people, Football Junkies Pod. Okay, Football Junkies Pod. I've been posting a lot of mock drafts. I posted my big board. Well, it's not really a big board, but my mock draft of the entire first round for all 32 teams. Make sure you guys like it. Let me know your thoughts on it for your team. Now, for my YouTube people, Football Junkies Pod. Okay, Football Junkies Pod. When you go on the YouTube, there's a link tree. When you go on that link tree, it'll take you to anywhere and everywhere that we have Football Junkies content. Okay. Now, for my Instagram people, Football_Junkies Pod. Okay, Football_Junkies Pod. Junkies Pod is not what? It is together, not spaced. Okay, it is together, not spaced. Football_Junkies Pod. Now on Twitter, you can follow me on there. GM Kale. Okay, GM Kale. Kaile. It's the same thing for Blue Sky as well. GM Kale. Kaile. Am I forgetting anything? No, I don't think so. But as always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. We are staying in the South. We are going to the AFC South. We are only one episode away from the great division that is the AFC North. So as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Please make sure you guys like this episode. Please. I put a lot of time in this one. 2 hours, this is a banger, okay? You should be able to clean your entire room or your entire house or your car out or do whatever you need to do, okay? 2 hours is good enough. This is your GM Kale signing out. Peace and love. Later.